He gets transported to a different world all by himself, where he has to fight monsters and goblins every day to survive. But for him, nothing really changes because even in his old world, Haru was a lonely loser with no friends and a future as dark as a black hole. Nobody ever noticed him since he didn't fit into any of the class groups, which were made up of the nasty delinquents, the school flirts, the gym, the sweaty nerds, and the overly strict good girls. Haru lays his head on his desk again, feeling like there's no place for a dork like him in this world. Suddenly, his classmates start acting dumb as they stare at a golden glowing circle forming in the middle of the classroom. Since Haru is a nerd like the rest of them, he already knows from all the mangas he's read that they're about to be transported to another world. But he's not interested, so he tries to leave by walking out the door. Unfortunately, the door is sealed shut, and no matter how hard he tries, he can't break through. Soon, the magic circle grows and begins to suck all the students in. Haru, having watched too many action movies, quickly jumps into the air duct to escape. But his luck runs out and the magic circle reaches him inside the duct, pulling him into a bright, empty void. Haru looks around, wondering where the heck his entire class is, expecting an ugly king with a super hot daughter to show up, but nothing happens. After a while, he spots an old man running toward him and trying to communicate using sign language for some reason. Strangely enough, Haru manages to understand him. The old man explains that all his classmates were summoned before him, and they were transported to a different world after picking a special skill. Now it's Haru's turn to choose a skill too, but out of 50, 43 have already been taken, so there are no cheat skills left. Realizing he's stuck with a lame skill, Haru's hopes are crushed even more when he sees that even a jellyfish has better options than the ones left for him. Frustrated, he shakes the old man like a maraca, yelling at him to stock better skills or at least learn how to count so he doesn't summon more people than he has skills for. The old man loses his patience and pushes Haru away, telling him that someone like him with the charm of a bowling ball wouldn't survive even with the best skills. So the old man gives Haru all the remaining skills and pushes him down into the new world. When Haru lands, he can't believe his eyes as he finds himself standing in the middle of a huge forest, all alone and scared. Then he notices a pouch on the ground. He picks it up and realizes it has unlimited storage space, which is pretty cool. However, everything inside the pouch is as basic as it gets. Haru does a quick drip check and tries to see his stats, but instead 2 dice appear on the screen. When he rolls them, both show an M. Confused, he wonders if M means minus, so he plays it safe and puts all of his points into his luck stat. To his surprise, M stands for maximum, and now his luck stat is maxed out. He also discovers that since he's such a lonely loser, God has given him a special pity ability that lets him tame wild beasts. After looking around and realizing none of his classmates are nearby, Haru decides to move forward and build his own home, taking inspiration from those YouTube guys who make houses out of mud. Haru starts walking through the forest, feeling uneasy as if a huge monster might jump out at him. To calm his nerves, he takes out a skill item called contact lenses. As soon as he puts them on, he's surprised to find that they let him see the stats of everything around him, which turns out to be a super useful ability. Excited, he continues exploring, finding herbs that can boost his health, and venom mushrooms, and more. With his endless bag, he easily collects as much as he wants, planning to sell them for a big profit later. After rehydrating himself like a pro, Haru keeps walking through the forest and soon discovers an opening to a cave. He prays that there aren't any monsters inside and cautiously enters, hoping to find something useful. The cave quickly turns dark, so he pulls out a lantern and his magic tent, which he sets up, making himself comfortable for the night. By the time night falls, Haru feels even cozier than Bear Grylls. He collects twigs and uses his temperature magic to start a fire, which also helps keep any beasts away. Before going to sleep, Haru checks his stats again and notices that many of his skills have leveled up, but he's too tired to really care, so he dozes off. The next morning, he wakes up with a start, checking his surroundings to make sure everything is still safe. Thankfully, his monster-repelling techniques work perfectly. Feeling hungry, he lights another fire, grabs his pan, and cooks up some mushrooms and beef jerky, like a food YouTuber. The meal turns out great, and he wonders if he could live here as a muscled farmer, but then remembers he doesn't have any protein powder. So he heads out of the cave again to collect more herbs that can help him build muscle. While gathering herbs, he hears some noise behind him. He turns around to find a bunch of dumb goblins digging around. Terrified, Haru hides behind some bushes as the goblins start singing something ridiculous. He grabs his stick, deciding to take action before he gets affected by their nonsense. Haru wonders if his wooden stick will be enough to fight them off, but just to be safe, he puts on some protection. He then charges at the goblins, hitting one square on the head. Something inside him snaps as he starts whacking the poor goblin like it's a piñata, knocking it out cold. The other goblin, now scared, attacks Haru anyway. Luckily for Haru, the goblin's attacks are easy to predict, so he dodges them without much effort. He then smacks the goblin on the head and follows up with a small magic blast to finish it off. After that, he washes his face as the sun begins to set and decides to head back to his cave since he's done enough for the day. Once back, he roasts some mushrooms, feeling like a total hobo, and checks his stats. He's happy to see that several of his abilities have leveled up. But at the same time, he starts worrying about what the goblins might do if they find him alone in the cave. He quickly shakes off those scary thoughts, does some quick exercises to warm up, and heads to bed. The next morning, Haru wakes up to find mushrooms for breakfast again, which is starting to get really annoying. He wonders if he can find some meat, but immediately remembers how the vegans in his class would give him grief if he mentioned it. So he gets up, boosts his stats with some magic, and heads out for the day carrying his trusty stick. Soon, he finds an item on the ground, but it turns out to be just another useless mushroom. Frustrated, he tosses it aside and starts looking for meat like an idiot who thinks it grows on trees. After realizing how dumb that is, he decides to focus on his magic skills instead and boosts his stats again. Haru begins running through the forest, and to his surprise, his speed has increased a lot. His body feels lighter, faster, and even his attacks are quicker and stronger. Wanting to test this out, he spots a group of goblins nearby and jumps into the fight. He slaps the first goblin with his stick and knocks the second one on the head. However, this only makes the goblins angry, and one of the bigger ones grabs a club. Haru, not wanting to deal with that, hides behind some bushes and sneaks away. Deciding he's done enough for the day, he heads back to his cave. There, he thinks about everything he accomplished before starting some DIY projects like building an IKEA table. After a few tries, by the next morning, Haru gets pretty good at building things. He manages to put together a stool and a coffee table all by himself. Feeling confident, he decides to improve his security too. Now that he knows how to build stuff, he creates a wooden gate at the entrance of his cave to make sure no one can get in without his permission. That night, Haru goes out hunting for some small animals because he's craving meat. Luckily, he spots a rabbit running through the forest and manages to catch it like a wild cat. He smiles at the thought of having some tasty meat for dinner, but suddenly, he senses other people nearby and goes into alert mode. Looking around to his surprise, he sees a group of delinquents heading his way. Not wanting any trouble, Haru hides behind some bushes and quietly tries to sneak away. But then his instincts kick in, and he quickly uses his special vision ability to see everything around him. To his shock, he spots the class flirts coming from one direction, while the gym bros and creepy nerds are approaching from another side. Haru decides he wants nothing to do with any of them. Then he notices the vegan girls led by the class president heading his way too. He lets the rabbit go and wonders for a moment if he should meet up with the class president since she's been nice to him, and they've known each other since first grade. But he stops himself, reminding himself how great it feels to be his own boss. In the end, he decides that he's going to conquer this new world all on his own. Haru, trying to avoid some bullies, dives into the bushes. One of them hears a noise and moves toward him, but just as Haru fears getting caught, a rabbit jumps out, startling the bully. The group assumes it was just the rabbit and moves on. Haru, though he doesn't want to confront them, stays hidden to eavesdrop. They're not saying much, just the leader talking about one of the vice class reps in a crude way, while the others share their own thoughts. This reminds Haru of how the popular girls in class handle bullies. Then the leader annoys Tanaka, a quiet outsider, by asking if the girls' skills will help with their plans, as if using him like a search engine. The leader jokes that the vice rep is waiting for him, and the group finally leaves. Haru assumes the whole class is upstream but prefers being alone. Haru's main problem is that he's only gathered mushrooms so far, though his loner skill has leveled up by avoiding people. Still, he's only at level 3, likely because he hasn't advanced his Master of None and Ventriloquist skills, which he doesn't fully understand. He thinks Master of None might mean he can do many things but never master one, while Ventriloquist seems useless, like he's just a puppet for others. For now, he sets these thoughts aside and eats more mushrooms to clear his mind. On the next morning, Haru wakes to the sound of metal clashing and shouting. Thinking it's the bullies, he finds instead a group of nerds fighting goblins. Amused, he considers helping them even though they seem to be struggling. Using his evaluation skill, he checks their stats and sees they're all level 16 with impressive roles like Sorcerer, Guardian, and Shinobi, far more capable than him. This reminds him of how talented the rest of his class is, making him wonder why he was grouped with the nerds. As he's about to leave, his perception skill detects goblins sneaking up on the nerds. Remembering their kindness, Haru takes out the goblins and greets the nerds afterward. Unsure how to respond to their gratitude, he leads them back to his cave. The nerds are impressed by the structure he built on his own. Haru asks what happened to the rest of the class and why the nerds were out in the forest so early. The nerds explain that it all started when they were teleported into the forest. While some classmates panicked, the nerds quickly adapted. The bullies, sensing this, demanded answers and threatened them. During the chaos, a horde of goblins attacked. The nerds fought back using their skills to protect the group. Even the bullies and athletes joined the fight, and together they defeated the goblins. After the battle, the class rep suggested finding a safer place, so they set up camp near a river. The nerds helped set up the camp, and the class rep assigned tasks to everyone. But the popular girls refused to gather firewood, and their defiance spread, leading to laziness among many of the students. When a goblin attack hit the camp, the nerds were left to fight on their own. Though they won, they were exhausted. The nerds realized that not only were goblins a threat, but so were the bullies. The bullies had started stealing skills from other students, like charm, which controls people, and puppeteer, which manipulates others like puppets. The nerds overheard the bullies planning to create a harem in the camp. They warned the class rep, who decided to confront the bullies. With bravery, the nerds used magic to seal the bullies' sinister skills. Exposed, the bullies fled the camp but promised revenge. Chaos followed, and eventually, the camp was burned down. Most of the class blamed the nerds, even though the class rep and a few others defended them. In the end, the nerds were kicked out of the camp. Hearing the story, Haru was moved and hugged his friends, offering to host a mushroom party so they could relax and chat together. The next day, the nerds invited him to join them as adventurers. Though Haru appreciated the offer, he mysteriously declined, thinking he would only slow them down with his weak skills. Later, during his journey, Haru encountered a wolf monster and, despite being bitten, managed to defeat it. By nightfall, he reached his destroyed camp and followed footprints leading to the popular girls. Though he wanted to avoid them, they asked for his help, explaining that they wanted to apologize to the nerds for their mistakes. Surprised by their sincerity, Haru told them it was too late to catch up to the nerds. The girls, desperate, begged Haru to teach them how to survive. Haru reluctantly agreed, but noticed his subjugation ability had activated, binding the girls to him. Now they followed him everywhere, clueless and relying on him for guidance. Annoyed by their helplessness, Haru tried to figure out how to break the spell, but just then, the class rep appeared, shouting for his attention. Haru tries to call the class representative by her name but can't remember it, which annoys her. She gets frustrated and loudly complains. Soon, the other class reps catch up, out of breath, and their leader asks what happened to the preppy girls since they don't look well. Even Haru isn't sure, but it seems his subjugation skill made the girls act like zombies. The class rep asks if he used the skill on them, and Haru hesitantly nods. She gets upset, reminding him that the skill is meant for monsters, not people. Haru tries to explain it was an accident, but the girls give him cold, suspicious looks that make him uncomfortable. Haru manages to escape the awkward moment, but the girls demand he stay put. Frustrated, he wonders if this is the peaceful life he was hoping for in this new world. The leader of the reps shakes Shimazaki, the head of the preppy girls, until she snaps out of her daze. Then the class rep calls Haru back to gather everyone and figure out what's going on. Left alone for a moment, Haru thinks about practicing his house expansion skill or even building a base, but when he activates it, he accidentally buries himself in the ground, leaving only his head above the surface. The class rep pulls Haru aside to explain what Shimazaki told her. According to Shimazaki, Haru came to help them, which makes the girls bow in gratitude. Despite their thanks, Haru says he just wants to go home, but the girls scold him, reminding him that he promised to help. Confused, the class rep asks what he means by going home, and Haru explains that he built his own house after being thrown into this world. The girls are excited by this, and the leader immediately calls for a new strategy meeting, leaving Haru out of the discussion again. The class rep asks how many people can stay in his house, and Haru says around 240 could fit if they squeeze in, though the bathroom and kitchen might get crowded. The girls are amazed that his house even has rooms like that, and the leader is shocked it's basically a mansion in the middle of nowhere. Encouraged by her friends, the leader politely asks if they can stay at his house for the night. Stunned at the thought of hosting so many girls, Haru can't say no and leads them there, using his skills to guide them through the dark forest. After a long walk, the girls are exhausted and struggling to keep up with Haru's fast pace. Once they catch their breath, they realize they've arrived at a mansion in the middle of nowhere. The discovery excites them more than anything they've experienced in this dangerous new world. As he shows them around, most of the girls rush to the bathroom to bathe, throwing their clothes in the air as they go. Haru watches in amazement at how wild they've become after living in the forest. With the house now full, Haru sets up a tent outside for some privacy. Just as he starts enjoying the solitude, the class leader interrupts to thank him. She explains that since the boys left, the girls have been anxious, but now they're much more relaxed. It's surprising how much a nice room, good food, and a warm bath can lift their spirits. Despite this, the leader admits she hasn't led the group well through all the chaos. Haru reassures her, saying she's done her best even if she can't do what the nerds can. He explains that the nerds were prepared for this kind of situation and knew exactly what to do, while the rest of them are just trying to survive. This comforts her somewhat, though she still wonders if Haru is the true outlier for being able to build a mansion in the wilderness. Her sharp observation catches him off guard. After wishing him good night, she leaves and the girls finally get to enjoy a proper bath and a good night's sleep in the mansion. At dawn, one of the girls apologizes for waking Haru and tells him breakfast is ready. Startled, Haru doesn't recognize her and asks for another half hour of sleep. The girl teases him, saying he doesn't seem like he's getting up anytime soon. Feeling awkward, Haru changes the subject by asking what's for breakfast. She says it's mushrooms and grilled fish, which excites him since he's been eating only mushrooms for days. As they step out of the tent, Haru accidentally bumps heads with her. She quickly recovers, while Haru skips the apologies and dives straight into the fish, loving every bite. The girl, speaking for her group, asks if Haru lives near a stream. He admits he does, but says he's only been eating mushrooms because the fish are too fast and smart to catch. Curious, he asks if they have an easier way to catch fish. The girls show him their technique using electricity to instantly kill the fish in the river. Amazed, Haru asks them to do it again. When the girl gathers electricity in her hands, Haru uses his packaging skill to capture the spell. Applying the skill to the river, he manages to catch fish for the first time. To his surprise, he discovers he's developed his own electric magic using the packaging ability, which lets him recreate any elemental magic. The girl remarks that this seems a bit overpowered, and Haru agrees, saying it's probably due to a mix of his packaging skill and his Master of None ability. He still remembers how he got the worst powers while everyone else received the best, but controlling the electric magic makes him almost too excited. Later, Haru meets with the leader of the girls and asks if they decided their next move. She explains that they haven't reached a consensus but will likely head to the city. Haru assumes they want to catch up with the nerds, and the girls confirm they need to apologize. The leader emphasizes the importance of leveling up before their journey, and Haru agrees, offering to help. They begin by facing some nearby monsters, and although the girls are much stronger than the creatures, they struggle at first. Haru criticizes their performance, calling it weak, while the girls grumble that no one warned them the creatures would bite. After some training, they improve and manage to defeat the monsters. That night, a student runs through the forest, desperately trying to escape someone chasing him. Tripping over a rock, he crashes to the ground and is quickly captured. The student cries out that he doesn't have the power the pursuer is looking for, but the pursuer ignores him and strikes anyway. That marks the end of today's anime recap. If you enjoyed the video and want more of it, please support the channel by leaving a like and subscribe. Let's help us reach a current goal of 10K subscribers.